Twitter is taking the Trump administration to court for trying to force the social media network to reveal the identity of a user who criticized the president's policies, as opposed to historically where these government agencies have requested someone accused of a crime or speculated to be a terrorist. In this case, it's purely based on an account they didn't like. Joining us now for what this means is Fred McClimans, partner and head of research at Smoddy Partners, and a contributor at Seeking Alpha. Glad to have you back. Thoughts on the lawsuit?
This is actually an interesting situation here, and very different from some of the lawsuits that we've seen circulating around Apple and the iPhone and Facebook and their naming policy. In this case here, you've got a Twitter user, AltUSCIS, who admittedly appears to be a government or an ex-government employee who has been very critical of the incoming administration. In this case, the administration went to Twitter, as you mentioned, and basically said, look, there are no charges against this person, but you will tell us who they are. You'll give us their IP address, their email, anything that we can find to actually connect a name to that particular account. And Twitter, appropriately so, has pushed back on this. From the Twitter perspective, and I think from the larger user base perspective, this is something that's simply not acceptable. This is an issue of free speech, and it's an important step for Twitter, but not necessarily a critical one for them. I think they should prevail as long as they hold out against the government here. And it is interesting. The one thing I will say it does do is it humanizes Twitter at a time when it really needs that extra push right now in its user community.
Fred, how could this affect Twitter's stock to the upside or the downside, whether or not they win or lose this lawsuit? Would it have a major effect?
If Twitter loses this suit here, I think there's an element of trust in Twitter's whole purpose or being out there in the marketplace today that could put users off. It makes it that much more difficult for Twitter to be sort of that every street corner cafe globally linked together. As soon as you start to track who individual users are and give, in this case, the government, without any real justification, the ability to come in and demand that information, that really could have a detrimental effect on some of the conversation and utility of Twitter there. So that's my primary concern with Twitter right now with this particular issue.
Does it affect the user growth numbers at all, too, which we know sometimes the stock does move on these user growth numbers when the company reports earnings? I mean, does this show that maybe Twitter is more supportive, more looking out for its users, and that in turn could at least keep existing users on or maybe get more users to join the platform?
With regard to user growth, the reality for Twitter is that it literally is running out of users that it can bring onto the system. Right now, it has over, I think, about 1.3 billion users that have registered on the site, but only a little more than 300 million are what they call monthly active users that actually engage and use the system. Back in 5 years ago, their growth rate in terms of new users was about 59%. 3 years ago, it was down to 20%. In 2016, it was 4%. And we even have concerns that 4% number may not be the accurate number when you factor in the number of bots that have come onto the network over the last couple of years. They may actually be looking at, flat or maybe even negative, monthly active user growth within Twitter.
Fred, you're so good on this stuff. You know this stuff cold. You're more impressive than 90% of our guests. Question for you. Does this NFL loss, it wasn't... Financially, it did not matter that much. We know that it wasn't costing them a lot of money. They weren't making a lot of money. Give us your read on the loss of the NFL. Is that a buying opportunity or is that a real area of concern for you?
It's clearly a loss for Twitter and a win for Amazon in this particular case. But it highlights sort of an underlying issue that has dogged Twitter for years, especially as it's gone through multiple management team members. What does Twitter want to be when it grows up? Is it, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, is it that sort of street corner cafe globally connected where everybody can communicate? Or is it a provider of broadcast, live streaming, TV, video? Is it serving advertisers? Is it serving the global community? It simply doesn't know at this point here. And Twitter has had their issues. Their user rate, their viewer rate for the Thursday night NFL that they had last year was not particularly high. In fact, it was outdrawn by the Halo World Gaming Championship. So, Twitter in this case, they need to figure out who they're going to be. And realistically, even if they had won this go around, I don't think they have the channelization strategy to allow the average user to literally think of Twitter as that content feed and, switch between channels as they would be able to do on other platforms.
Fred, do you think that the Trump effect on Twitter has worn off? Of course, we saw a lot of people following a lot of his tweets. We didn't necessarily see that resonate with user growth in the latest quarter, but do you think that maybe the opportunity there has passed, or is there still opportunity for Twitter to capitalize on that?
Well, with the Trump effect, it's important to recognize that according to some of the studies that we've seen, anywhere from a fifth to perhaps more than 25% of all the tweets surrounding Trump came from bots. So, the Twitter effect with Trump, it's a little bit questionable. There's no denying that it's massive, but the question is that sustainable or not? I think at this point, people are starting to grow a little bit tired of that, and we're seeing a shift in the conversations that are appearing on Twitter. Even last night, while Twitter was certainly a buzz, after the attacks in Syria, we didn't necessarily see that same type of spiking interest that we have in the past in other areas.
All right, Fred McClimans. McClimans. Guys, they put these phonetic stuff in the prompter that just Fred McClimans. Guys, I know how to spell McClimans. Samadi Partners, Seeking Alpha. Thank you so much for joining us. Great having you today.